Is AI going to save humanity, or is it going to destroy humanity and destroy us, aka bad? Is it good or is it bad? In that very question is something that, if you're caught up in either side of that, it could be impeding your own progress towards consciousness, towards spirituality, towards a higher state of being, to even be asking the question. And I want to make that point clear on the video today, because if we look at anything, any new technology, and ask the question, is it good or is it bad? The answer is always both. It is both things, any new technology. And this has been true since as long as recorded history has existed. That technologies are just the technologies, and the technologies can be implemented and used and allowed to propagate in ways that are harmful, and they can be used in ways that are helpful. I use AI almost every day, and yet when I look around at what's happening with AI, am I happy with that? The answer is no. Am I happy with tech bros being in charge of a small number of companies that just seem to be an inevitable march towards data centers and environmental destruction? The answer is hell no. I am not happy with that stuff. Does that mean that AI is bad? No, it does not, because there are actually layers to a problem like this. I saw a video recently by a guy, Nick, who talks about financial matters, and I'll try to link that his video in the description here so that you can see if you want to. But he made the case that the problem with AI is not the technology itself. The problem is the financial hype, the financial bubble, and all of the things that a financial hype and a financial bubble entails. And he likened it to the dot-com bubble, which he lived through and I lived through. And the dot-com bubble was the same thing. All these internet companies were going to save the world, and they seemed like on this inevitable march, and everybody was supposed to just bow down, get out of the way, move out, from this inevitability. And his point was, well, that bubble crashed, but that didn't mean the internet disappeared. We're still using the internet 25 years later, for better or worse, and it's probably not going to disappear, right? But all of that hype, that seeming inevitability, all of that like investors and all the money piling in and telling everybody to get out of the way, that was the actual problem then, and that is the problem now with AI. That was Nick's point. My point is that if we want to be people who are oriented towards, again, our own consciousness, our own spirituality, but also the betterment of the species, like our humanity is kind of messed up right now. I've talked about the possibility of ascension or moving into some higher state or whatever. Whatever your beliefs on that, I believe we do have the choice before us now. We either step up and be part of the solution of improving the lot of humanity in higher consciousness, or we continue to be part of the problem. And it is polarities like this that are one of the major problems that we're involved in. It's not about whether that technology is good. It can be used in good ways. It's not about whether that technology is bad, because, as I've said, it can be used in bad ways. It is about our relationship to that and understanding it is our human thinking and our human discussions. So I saw another video, a short video that was about some political race. And one of the candidates was backed sort of discreetly by an AI company. So they had a lot of money flowing into them by multiple AI companies, because that particular candidate was supposedly, not going to impede the building of data centers in that area. There's another candidate who's opposed to data centers. And so this video was about the influence of that money on the campaign and the two different candidates and how one was just going to bowl over. And so it's an interesting thought because, again, it was framed as, here's this candidate who says AI is bad, no data centers. That's the way it was framed. I'm not saying that's the way it is, but that's the way it was framed. A candidate who's like, no more data centers because AI is bad. And the candidate who's like, yeah, okay, I'll take your money and do data center. So is the problem there AI, or is the problem the money and how money flows to political candidates and how it influences people to make decisions that aren't always the best for their communities? Because I'm a full believer that if a community is like, yeah, no, we want to be careful about, how the AI data centers are built and the impact on the community and the electricity bills and everything else, the environment, that, we should have a say in that. But that's a political brokenness problem that we all need to fix. I know it's hard, but we need to be part of the solution. And being part of the polarization is not part of the solution. Just think if people were able to sit down with these CEOs. Now, I know it seems like a relentless march right now, but what if a community was to say, okay, we're not going to stop you from building a data center, but we have these requirements for its impact on our communities, and it might cost you more. If you don't like it, you can go do it somewhere else. Like, that is a kind of discussion that's a more mature discussion. And sometimes that happens, but often it does not because we're all so caught up in it. That's the same thing about AI taking jobs. I've seen multiple things about how AI is going to steal our jobs. And yes, this is a problem. It is a real problem of taking away jobs. But at the same time, as the leader of a very small business, I see that there are certain things that we literally cannot pay another person to do that AI helps us do. And that if we don't do that, we're likely to not survive, or more likely to not survive. It's much more difficult to survive. So we use AI for some things. But is my goal to just replace my employees? No, because I have the ability to think about what is my goal in my business. Is my goal just to maximize my profit at all costs and forget about my employees and whatever? No, definitely not that. I've been in that mindset in the past because I thought that's what I was supposed to do as a business leader. And I finally, after doing that for a while, decided this is not working. It makes nobody happy. I'm not happy. My employees aren't happy. Nobody is made happy by that. Yeah, maybe I have a little bit more money in the pocket, but even that is kind of questionable whether that actually leads to more money. When you have poor morale and people unhappy, I don't know. So I made this personal decision of I'm going to value the people on my team and their growth. And that was a decision of, that's not a mutually exclusive decision between that and AI. It's a human decision. And the cool thing is that my employees are embracing AI and embracing what they learn and it making their jobs easier. So it's not about replacing them. It's about making it so that their job is easier. And wouldn't we all there's this whole thing of I need to make a different video on this, but I'll try to be brief on this one. Wouldn't it be nice if we all had really only 4 hours of work to do per day or something? I remember long ago, there was an anthropologist when I was taking a class that studies of more, people from undeveloped areas, that they tended to spend about 4 hours per day in activities that would be considered sustaining themselves. Things like getting food and shelter and all of that stuff. 4 hours per day, that's it. The rest was spent on activities that they wanted to be doing. Games, discussions, just, whatever, wandering around. I don't know what they were doing with the rest of the time, but wow, that sounds fantastic to me. But in all of the discussions of AI, there's this sort of assumption of oh, we have to keep working in the same way that we've already been working. And no, we don't have to keep working. Like, what if we could really only work 3 or 4 hours a day at most to sustain ourselves? And what if we only had to work 3 or 4 hours a day at most to sustain ourselves, because technology like AI helps with the rest? And then we could choose things that are interesting and challenging for our own growth, for our own excitement, for our own development. Like, I know there are a lot of people out there thinking, oh, we would all just sit around being lazy. But studies have actually contradicted that. And so, again, I'll do another video on that. But you see that, again, there's this polarity of like, it has to be one way or it has to be the other way. Well, what if it was like we all work less? So it's not like the haves that, work a lot and have all of their AI minions doing things, and then the have-nots that aren't working at all and are suffering. Like that. Really? Like, do we have to do things that way? No, we don't. Nobody said we have to. But then in order to do something different, we have to reclaim our own authority. And part of reclaiming our own authority, whether you call that spiritual or consciousness or just whatever it is to say, no, we don't have to accept what these authorities or what anybody else says is like this inevitable thing. We together made these systems that we have been existing in. These systems are breaking down. So why don't we take this opportunity to make better systems? And in taking this opportunity, if we're stuck in polarized thinking, we cannot make better systems. Because then what happens is this chain reaction of like, well, they do something, they come and try to build a data center, and then all we're doing is protesting against, reacting against, saying, no, 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 not in my neighborhood. And then we push back, and then they push back, and they get the lobbyists, and they get the whatevers, and then we push back, and then they push back, and then we push back, and then by the end, nobody wins. Or they just bulldozer over everybody. Like, that doesn't work. It doesn't lead to progress. There is a role for protest. I'm not anti-protest for anybody out there who wants to complain in the comments. I'm not anti-protest, but I am anti being so polarized that we can't actually see, like, we are humans here on the planet, and there are a lot of us, and the only way we're going to better society is if we actually get out of the polarities and start thinking about how we can work together. So AI is happening. It is a technology. Unless something happens to bomb us back to the Stone Age or whatever, it's going to exist. The question is whether we act like adults, act with consciousness, and take charge of that technology and make sure it's contained and grows in a reasonable way and used in ways that are supportive of humanity, or whether let it run amok and let this notion of inevitability, or let really what it is, all of the financial people who want to make a bazillion, trillion, cajillion dollars off of AI, like, rule and dominate everything because of their effing greediness. Like, do we really want that? I don't want that. Those people should not be in charge. I don't think greed should be in charge of anything. That is not the way to run a better society. But that doesn't mean AI is inherently bad. So I hope you get that distinction and understand that this also applies to our personal lives. If we are on a path of higher consciousness and development, like want to be more spiritual or conscious, whatever you call that, then when we engage in those kinds of polarities, we are taking ourselves to what you could call a lower frequency of thinking, a lower vibe, a lower resonance, because then we're making us right and them wrong and us right. Every time we do that, we are in a lower level of thinking than when we say, okay, well, I've got this opinion. I don't have to change my opinion, but I've got an opinion, and maybe I don't like this thing, and that's totally fine. But I'm not going to make it into this big right and wrong, righteous battle justified by whatever. Maybe we've all watched too Hollywood, and that would certainly too much Hollywood. That would include me. I've watched a lot of movies where people go righteously battle, and it's great to be a viewer and see the good guy win and the bad guys all get wiped out. It's, it's very satisfying to the human ego to see that. But that is not the actual way we solve real problems in humanity, especially not this AI one that we seem to have right now. So I hope that gives some perspective and you find that useful. And I need to sign off. But, oh yeah, before I do, please, as always, there's that little button down there where you can hit like the little thumbs up. If you got something out of this message, it's always awesome when you hit that button. It's like just one little mouse move and click. And of course, if you subscribe, then you can hear more from me in the future. Maybe you want to, maybe you don't. But if you do, it prioritizes in the algorithm actually showing you stuff when I publish new stuff. So that's awesome. So I really appreciate it if you do that. And I think you'll benefit from it if you enjoy this content. If you enjoy this fresh view, I try to look at things from not just this like woo-woo spirituality, although I believe in like woo-woo spirituality, but like it needs to be practical. If we don't make it practical, what's the point of doing it? If it's all just to be off, in praying or whatever it is that people do, it needs to be practical. And this is one of those very practical aspects. So I'll see you soon.